Alright, it's time to talk about endgame group content and how I manage to perform decently regardless of the groups I'm playing with. And I actually have never practiced a rotation on the training golem, ever. Controversial? I know, but let me explain. Whenever a new player asks for advice on how to get started with raids, strikes or fractals, we tell them it's easy. Just buy gear off the trading post and head over to Snowcrows for a build and follow the rotation. This is good advice, but if it's your first time in a new encounter, you'll have mechanics to worry about, probably your team to worry about because they might also make a mistake, and chances are your eyes are glued to your skills on the bottom of your screen more than the actual fight itself. And with all of that going on, you still need to be remembering this, or maybe this. I do things a bit differently. Instead of worrying whether I pressed 4 before 5 and after 2, I choose to focus on something I call damage uptime. I will always prioritize doing mechanics first, of course. But after that, or during even, I want to be hitting the boss or whatever ad we need to kill. This allows me to consistently place at least in the middle of the pack of the DPS players, and sometimes I even top the chart. And often I even challenge DPS players when I'm playing a Boon support role. I actually even apply the same principles when I'm the healer, but in a slightly different way. Now, I know this doesn't make me Snowcrow's materials, but none of the friends I play with or the pugs I join are vying for that either. All we worry about is a smooth clear and having fun. So let's bring some method to the madness. My first priority, regardless of the encounter, is doing the mechanics. No one's DPS will matter if we wipe because of a failed mechanic. I don't even mind sacrificing my own damage if it means everyone else gets a smoother run. In one of my last Samurok kills, I told my team my damage would be subpar at best, but I would have them covered for the break bars. From a pure DPS perspective, that means underperforming. But if you look at the encounter as a whole, it meant success for the group. I already mentioned eyes being glued to the skill bar, and if this is you, that's something to work on. You don't need to keep watching a skill that's on cooldown and only glancing over at the boss occasionally. Flip it around, watch the boss and the field at all times, and only glance down at your skills every now and then. The next part of the process is easy, just make sure you're hitting the boss. That means actually attacking them whenever you're all nicely stacked, and if you need to do a mechanic, try to keep hitting the boss while doing whatever you need to do. You can make this a bit easier on yourself by playing ranged builds. That way, if you need to move out for whatever reason, you can still face the boss and, at worst, just auto-attack. If you're playing a ranged build and a mechanic is forcing everyone to spread, be kind and be the one to move away. That way, your melee players will have some breathing room and can continue doing their thing as well. And if you can, try and simplify your build if you need to. Condition Virtuoso is a great example of a simple build, with almost all of the utility skills being signets. Mechanists and thieves have the same option as well. And I'm not saying to replace all of your skills with passive ones, but having a passive is better than not pressing a skill at all. Once you get comfortable doing both the mechanics and making sure you're always attacking the boss, you can choose to help out your team in whatever way you see fit. I already gave the Samurok example, but every class has something that will make them unique and can help out the team. If you're a warrior and you don't really need an elite, then the res banner will come in clutch more often than you think. Necromancers, thieves and engineers can strip boons fast and easy, or revenants can provide stability on knockdown heavy fights. Anyway, there's tons of examples for every single class out there, but I'll get to those in class-specific videos. Instead, I want to focus on the basics and ask you what you think the most important buttons are. To me, my most important buttons are W, A, S and D, or whatever the equivalent would be on your keyboard, as these allow me to move. How many times have you seen teammates take damage instead of dodging because their endurance was empty? If there are mechanics coming up that you know about which will force you to move, you can more often than not solve it with basic movement instead of expending both of your dodges. Again, I'm not saying to never dodge, just make sure that whatever you do, it serves a purpose. Because when you dodge for no reason at all, you're giving up a great defensive tool and you actually stop attacking the boss. If you're a Vindicator, Mirage or Daredevil, ignore what I just said. You guys are built differently. And a final point I want to touch on are keybinds. Unless you've got hands like Shaq, you're not hitting that 9 or 0 key without looking at it and letting go of your other keys, or at least with some discomfort. It might take some getting used to, but setting up your keybinds around your movement keys will do wonders for your overall performance. All of this will be very personal. I'll explain my own mindset behind my keybinds so that you can copy the principles, but not necessarily use the exact same keys I do. Personally, I keep the 1 to 5 keys as I can hit those easily, but I repurpose my Q and E keys as keyboard turning is something you don't want to do. You want to be able to move forwards, backwards and strafe left and right, but turning is better done by holding down your right mouse button. It's far more exact and it's faster. So my Q and E are bound to 2 of my utility skills, and by adding a shift modifier I can add 2 more skills to the list. You'll notice my elite skill is bound to shift R. That's because I like to randomly fat finger my R key. It's personal, it's slightly embarrassing, but now only I need to know, not the rest of my team. If you're now wondering where my auto run key is, it's my middle mouse button. It's as simple as pressing R, but this frees up a key in a prime location. Same goes for my dodges and weapon swap, which are on V and B. At first, these might seem weird, but C, V and B are where my thumb naturally rests on my keyboard, so I just press them with my thumb. I'm also not the biggest fan of hitting my F keys. Previously, I had a 65% keyboard which didn't have any, and now that I do, I still find it uncomfortable. If you have a mouse with 2 buttons on the side, you can actually bind them to 8 skills, because you can add Shift, Control or Alt modifiers to them. Some people will swear by using an MMO mouse, and that's a good option too. I actually tried out one for myself, and while it was fun in games like World of Warcraft and Final Fantasy, for some reason I tend to cramp up when I'm holding an MMO mouse, so I eventually switched back to the one I'm currently using. So all of this boils down to a simple thing, really. Make sure you're comfortable playing so that you can focus on mechanics, and keep hitting the boss, because in essence that's all there is to a raid, strike or fractal. I hope to be able to lower the barrier to entry for some endgame content, first by running my own groups, but also by providing guides. Some of my advice will stray from what is usually recommended, but it works for me and the people I'm playing with, and I hope it'll work for you too.